12 drivers climbed out of their cars at COTA, and at least one of them couldn't stand up on his own. The track surface may have reached extreme temperatures. Cockpit air temperatures reportedly peaked as high as 140 degrees, and multiple cooling suits, the only thing standing between these drivers and heat-related medical emergencies, failed. Not at the end of the race, during it. NASCAR released data in the days following the event, and what it shows is alarming enough that the entire motorsport community is now demanding answers. This is not a story about a hot day at a road course. This is a story about a safety system that broke down in real time. While 95 laps of racing played out on a 2.4-mile circuit in Austin, Namchun, Texas, the 2026 Duramax Texas Grand Prix powered by Relodyne at Circuit of the Americas went green on March 1st under conditions that should have raised immediate flags before the field even took the pace laps. Air temperature at race start, 88 degrees Fahrenheit. By mid-race, it had climbed to 95. The heat index crossed 105 degrees, and the track surface, absorbing sunlight all afternoon on COTA's exposed road course layout, registered extreme temperatures according to available data. The heat drivers experienced was not a marginal condition. It was relentless, and the drivers felt every degree of it. Now here is what made it survivable for most of the field: the cooling suit. It is a water circulating system built into the driver's fire suit that pumps cool water through tubes across the body while a paired helmet blower pushes chilled air to the head. In extreme heat, it is not a comfort item. It is a medical necessity. And on March 1st in Austin, multiple of those systems stopped working while the race was still running. Tyler Reddick in the 45 Toyota from 23XY Racing crossed the finish line nearly 4 seconds ahead of Shane Van Gisbergen to take the win. Reddick was dominant. He led 58 of the race's 95 laps, and this was a commanding performance from the points leader. Christopher Bell in the 20 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota finished third. The finish looked clean. The on-track product looked competitive. 14 lead changes among 9 drivers, 3 caution flags, 95 laps of genuine road course racing. From the broadcast booth, it looked like a well-run event. But that is only half the story. Because behind that clean finish, inside those cockpits, drivers were managing a crisis that the television cameras were not showing you. A Jay Allmendinger in the 16 Cowlig Racing Chevrolet finished 9th. He crossed the line, brought the car to pit road, climbed out, and collapsed. Medical personnel were immediately on scene. Allmendinger was placed on a gurney and transported from pit road to the infield care center. He was evaluated and ultimately released. But let that image settle for a moment. A driver who just finished a NASCAR Cup Series race could not stay on his feet after exiting the vehicle. His cooling suit had failed during the race. He drove 95 laps on a scorching track surface in a cockpit hitting extreme temperatures, and did it without a functioning cooling system. He finished 9th. Alex Bowman in the 48 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet did not have that option. Bowman felt unwell during the race and could not continue. He completed 70 laps before driving to the garage, where relief driver Myatt Snyder stepped in to complete the race distance. Bowman went directly to the infield care center and received intravenous fluids. Jeff Andrews, president and general manager of Hendrick Motorsports, addressed it plainly afterward. It came on suddenly. He was seen in the care center and received fluids. There was no dramatic announcement, no red flag, no stoppage of racing. The sport just kept going. Kyle Larson in the 5 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet also reported his cooling suit stopped working. Larson, one of the most physically conditioned drivers in the garage, managed it the way a veteran racer manages a problem when stopping is not an option. He dumped water on himself, applied ice directly to his chest, and stayed as hydrated as possible throughout the event. He finished 6th. His quote after the race tells you exactly how serious it got. "I was getting nervous." Kyle Larson does not say that lightly. Ryan Preece also reported a cooling suit failure. And then came the part nobody saw coming. It took 11 days. That is how long it took before NASCAR publicly addressed what the drivers had been experiencing. NASCAR issued a safety data bulletin with numbers reflecting the severity of conditions. Average cockpit air temperatures reported throughout the race, peak cockpit temperatures ranging as high as 140 degrees, and seat skin temperatures reaching dangerous levels. Chase Briscoe in the 19 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota reported via radio that his cockpit peaked at 140 degrees. NASCAR's official statement acknowledged that high ambient temperatures challenged driver endurance and confirmed that cockpit temperatures exceeded 120 degrees, which the organization described as standard for non-AC race cars in these conditions. That framing is where the debate gets heated. No pun intended. The next-gen car, which has been NASCAR's platform since 2022, runs without air conditioning and race configuration. That is not unusual for motorsport at this level. What is unusual is the combination of the next-gen's specific cockpit design, which traps more ambient heat than the previous Generation 6 car did from 2013 through 2021, combined with a black roof that absorbs solar radiation, combined with COTA's wide-open road course layout that provides almost no shade at any point during the lap. NASCAR's own rulebook covers driver safety protocols. No violations were issued. No penalties were handed down. Clean inspections across the field. The official position, all protocols were followed, but the protocols, by their own admission, allowed at least 4 drivers to experience cooling suit failures, including one who collapsed upon exiting the vehicle. The community response was immediate and pointed. NASCAR fans and insiders rallied around calls for safety reforms, with widespread sentiment that the current cooling suit reliability standard is inadequate for hot weather events. Discussions specifically about cooling suit failure mechanics spread rapidly, breaking down how the water circulation pump can fail at precisely the moments when it is needed most. Jeff Gluck of The Athletic framed it clearly. The conditions at COTA were routine for Central Texas in early March, but the data underscores that the next-gen car has a heat-trapping problem that existing cooling equipment is not reliably solving. Here is the thing about that. This is not the first time COTA has created a safety conversation. The inaugural Cup Series race at this track back in 2021 was a different kind of disaster. Heavy rain, visibility issues, multiple major crashes, a car that briefly caught fire, and a race that got shortened by 14 laps. Drivers were openly critical of NASCAR for running in unsafe wet weather conditions that day. Chase Elliott won that race. The criticisms landed. NASCAR adjusted. The question in the spring of 2026 is whether the organization will treat heat safety with the same urgency it applied to wet weather visibility, or whether the current response represents the full extent of their action. And when you look at what NASCAR actually announced, the answer creates more questions than it resolves. The safety bulletin recommended enhanced cooling vests for future hot weather events. It noted that NASCAR is considering air conditioning mandates for non-race trim situations. No timeline, no mandate, no immediate equipment standard change. The language was future tense and advisory. For a sport that prides itself on data-driven decision-making, issuing a recommendation 11 days after a driver collapsed on pit road feels like a gap between the urgency of the incident and the pace of the institutional response. And when you look at the standings now, you will see why this changes the conversation even further than just one race weekend. Tyler Reddick's win at COTA extended his lead at the top of the Cup Series standings, where he sits with 186 points. His 23XI teammate Bubba Wallace is second. Chase Elliott in the 9 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet sits third. Denny Hamlin in the 11 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota finished 10th at COTA and is among the contenders working to close the gap on Reddick through the early weeks of the season. The broader manufacturer picture is also shifting in a meaningful direction. Toyota equipment has been a dominant force through the opening races of the season, with Reddick leading the points and JGR drivers regularly appearing in the top 10. That is not a coincidence. It is a pattern that Chevrolet and Ford teams need to respond to, and quickly. For Hendrick Motorsports specifically, COTA was a rough weekend regardless of the heat story. 2 of their drivers, Larson and Bowman, dealt with cooling failures, one of them significant enough to force a retirement. The road course season is not over. These Hendrick drivers have historically performed well at venues like this, but they cannot afford more mechanical attrition. Alex Bowman's mid-race retirement raises a separate question that the standings do not capture. What is the protocol when a driver becomes medically unable to continue because of an equipment failure? A cooling suit is not an optional accessory at temperatures like these. It is part of the safety system. When it fails, is the driver supposed to continue racing? Bowman made the right call, but the fact that the answer to that question is left entirely to driver judgment, rather than governed by a clear NASCAR protocol, is exactly the gap that critics are now pushing the sanctioning body to address. That sets up what could be one of the more consequential off-track weeks of the 2026 season. The series moves immediately to Phoenix Raceway for the Straight Talk Wireless 500, an oval track, 312 laps, and forecast conditions of roughly 75 degrees Fahrenheit. That temperature gap compared to COTA is significant. Phoenix in early March is not going to produce cockpit temperatures anywhere near what Austin generated, But the heat story does not go away just because the weather cooperates at the next venue. It follows the sport down the schedule. COTA is the kind of venue and the kind of date, early March in Central Texas, where 95-degree air temperatures are not exceptional. They are expected, and the schedule is not getting cooler. NASCAR runs Talladega in the spring heat, returns to COTA annually, and hits venues across the South through the summer months before the playoffs begin in September. If cooling suit failures are systemic, and 4 documented failures in a single race suggests they may be, the sport is going to face this question again before the season is half over. Watch Reddick at Phoenix. Back-to-back dominant performances to open the season have put him in a conversation about whether this is the year he breaks through as the dominant force in the championship picture. He is comfortable, he is confident, and he is clearly driving at a high level right now. Watch Bowman. His return to the 48 after a mid-race heat retirement will draw attention in the garage. How he performs, and whether Hendrick Motorsports makes any equipment changes to their cooling systems ahead of Phoenix, will signal how seriously the organization is treating what happened in Austin. Watch for any NASCAR response beyond the initial safety bulletin. The driver community's reaction to the advisory-only statement has been pointed. If voices like Larson, who described getting nervous inside the cockpit, continue to push publicly for mandatory standards, NASCAR will face increasing pressure to act faster than their current pace suggests. And watch the Bowman medical situation specifically. The 48 retired mid-race. A relief driver completed the event. That is an unusual operational circumstance, and the circumstances that caused it, a driver medically unable to continue due to a cooling equipment failure, deserve a clear policy answer from NASCAR before the sport rolls to its next hot weather event. Extreme temperatures on the racing surface, 140 degrees reported inside the cockpit, a driver on a gurney at pit road, and a safety bulletin issued 11 days later recommending enhanced vests. The 2026 NASCAR season is 3 races old, and it already has a safety conversation that is not going away. Phoenix is next, but the real question is what comes after Phoenix, and whether NASCAR acts before the temperatures climb again.